Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Shazad Siddiqui, and it's my privilege to introduce Dr. Aznan Hasan. Day before yesterday, I was honored to be on the same panel with him at Harvard University, and he's joined us in Toronto for this early riser session on the basics of Islamic retail banking. Dr. Hasan is the Assistant Professor of Islamic Law and the former head of the Islamic Law Department at the International Islamic University in Malaysia, where he's taught subjects like international commercial law. He serves as a Shariah Advisor to various financial institutions, including Barclays Capital, Kane Takaful Solution in Bahrain, and the Islamic Unit Trust Schemes and Sukuk, Securities Commission of Malaysia. He's also been appointed by the Prime Minister's Department to look into zakat and zakat solutions. He has a degree in Sharia from the University of Al-Azhar, a master's in Sharia from Cairo University, and has obtained his PhD from the University of Wales. Dr. Hasan.
Assalamu alaikum and very good morning. Alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man tabi'ahu wa nasuhu wa la. Dear Brother Chairperson, the audience, sorry to take this very early morning to talk a little bit. They call early riser. I don't know why they called that name. Maybe emulating kind of birds where they were early risers, find their foods and everything. And we come here to find another sort of food. I try my best to have a very short discussion in 20 minutes where we talk about basic principles in retail banking and so forth and so on. Is it working? Yes. All right. So let me just make it simple. I believe that my presentation, my slides are quite technical in that sense. Let me just browse through the slide, and try to get some feeling about the slide, what we can do in retail banking and so forth and so on. That's basically the outline of my presentation. I think you know better what is retail banking. The intention of retail banking is to cover the mass. The intention is to give the retail people, the normal people like us who want to buy house, who want to buy car, want to have sort of cash and so forth and so on to get that. In some countries, this become more sophisticated to cover also the wealth management and the private banking sector. In some countries where Islamic banking become the mainstream or become a sort of dualism, dual practice, they also provide Islamic banking, Islamic private banking practices and also the financial consolidation. In Malaysia, for example, we have launched the Islamic financial consolidation products together with Islamic private banking for that particular situation. In Middle East, they have a lot of Islamic private banking because there were so many wealthy people, and they are still, I believe, even though whatever situation that they have. Give you an example, when I was in Kuwait one time, Sheikh Nizam may have a lot of joke on that. I was in Kuwait talking to some people. We were talking about ultra high net worth. We were talking about high net worth. They said in Kuwait we have three. We have high net worth, we have super high net worth, we have super ultra high net worth, to show that how rich people sometimes in that particular area. So for these people, they have a lot of money. They don't have, especially when the oil was so good that time, they have a lot of money, and private banking was the thing that they were looking into. In Malaysia also, new generation, they have one initiative, they call it Be a Millionaire When You Are 30. So for these people also, they may want to have some sort of Islamic banking products on private banking, for example. But the intention of retail banking basically to cover the mass, to cover not only those who are at the high level, not only on the upper level, but also on the lower and middle level for that particular situation. As I said, this very basic definition will evolve with the evolvement of situation, time, practices, and so forth and so on. All right, this is basically the thing that we have in normal retail banking in a bank. We have deposits. For example, we have house financing, we have car financing, CAD facilities, we have also personal financing and so forth and so on. I will not go too much on the details, give you some structures for you to ponder upon and try to look into the underlying structures of it. So the detail we come and we can talk later on a more detailed session on that. So in conventional, what differentiates Islamic from conventional is that in conventional, I think you study law, you know that the case of Foley versus Hill, for example, in that particular case, it was simply said that the basic core for conventional is loan with interest. In Islamic, you know that loan should not be with interest at all. So in Islamic banking and finance, they devise and they have a structures or facility that may give you the same economic effects, but following the Islamic principle that concur to the Islamic law for that matter. Basically, we can say that the main two pillars is that they must be based on certain principles, the avoidance of riba, the avoidance of gharar, uncertainty that may lead to dispute, and the prohibited commodities. You cannot deal with prohibited commodities, and rule of consent must be there. It may be very simple, but sometimes detailed explanations are needed by scholars to explain further what is rule of riba, what is rule of gharar, what is rule of prohibited commodities, especially in modern time. Commodities are not just black and white. They can come in colors. And a thing may be prohibited in certain circumstances, may not be prohibited in other circumstances. These are the rules of the scholars to then evaluate, investigate, and give decision whether a particular understanding is under prohibited commodities or not. And for them to be able to give financing to the client, they will use certain underlying contracts that we can see later how these contracts are used. These are the products that normally offered in deposit, in retail banking, deposit taking activities, house financing, car financing, personal financing, credit cards, and so forth and so on. In a nutshell, these are the products that normally a bank may have when they have a full range of retail Islamic financial products. On the saving and current account, they have some bank, they use loan without interest, which is called Hasan. They may also use mudarabah. Mudarabah is a contract whereby the depositors deposit their money into the bank, and they will become sort of Rabbul Mal, the capital provider, and the bank will use the money for certain activities. Whatever profit generated from that money will be shared between the bank and the customer, they deposited at certain particular rates, ratio agreed upfront. Investment account, in some countries they use mudarabah. Deposit account, in some countries they use tawaruk, the sale-based contract to allow the customer to get a fixed income for that particular deposit, for that particular situation. They may also use wakalah for that matter. House financing, they can also employ various contracts. They can use murabahah, the normal markup contract. The client wants to buy a house, for example, approaching the bank. The bank will purchase the house, pay the person, the seller of the house or the developer for that matter, at certain cash sale. They buy from the developer, they pay cash. After owning the house, then the bank will sell the house to the client at markup. How the client will pay the bank will depend on how they agree with the bank. Credit become credit, can be 10 years, can be 20 years. In some countries, when you buy house, for example, it has to be long-term paying. It has to be more than 10 years, for example. So it depends on this negotiation between the client and the banks on the rate and everything. It can be also under, sorry, I put all the terms there. Ahmad is about ijarah, is about leasing with a promise to sell. So the bank purchase the house from developer or from the person, lease the house to the client will pay rental. At the end of the day, the house will be transferred to the client by the bank selling it at certain price agreed upon between the client and the bank. And also in some countries, they have equity-based house financing, where they use the diminishing partnership. These normally used when, say for example, in certain circumstances, in certain countries, you are only allowed to give financing to the client at certain particular percentage. In Malaysia, for example, you cannot finance the client for the full price.